Okay, so we will start with prayers, and then after that I will have to do my confessions and my apologies. Long, full-length prostrations. Noi valenza vela marimpoche, da che divo benedenziola. Caden chamber gone jesonde, kuzon du jing adu sadu so, ning to chamber payo len mantu, Lord chamber jugun denizik, tu ba chamber chamdo jianten, Loza chamber shabla solvande, nutu chamber kunda senese, kaje chamber lama nyepase, sundu chamber drupe jasensu, repa chamber shabla solvande, tekpa chamber ikcho yomsuse, Shaja chamber topa ngandujo, tende chamber kata nyampada, nigom chamber shabla, tamba namla gube satatu, drupju tensen chonam shaptenjing, tempa rinsen choju jepadam, Tengele chamber japa sho jewa kunto yanda lamada dame jeje bala lom churching sadang lam je anten rabsone doje jange goban nyoto sho sanje cheda soje jonamla shamju badu dane chapsoje chin soje pesernamje dola penje sanje jupasyo sanje jodang soje jonamla shamju badu dane chapsoje Tage jinso jipe sanamje, dola benje sanje dupasyo, sanje jodang soji chonamla, shanjo badu dane chapsoje, tage jinso jipe sanamje, Dola bendye sanje jopasyo, senjen tamje devadam, deve judan denpa jujik, dungadang dungaji judan delwa jujik, dungal mepe mindalwa jujik, Nyering chadan dan jalwe tonyom chempola nepa joje chatsa wadan chujing shapadan jesu yerang kushing solvaye kewa chunse dagi jisapa tamje dagi chanju So, my sincere apologies to all of you and to all of you online. It looks to me like, did anybody leave while you were all waiting? No. I was saying, oh, my sound went. I was saying to Joel, microphone just went. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Something went. Sorry? You can hear okay. Oh. So I was saying that There's no sound. I was saying that it's a pity this is not the parameter of patience that we're studying now. Then I could tell you that, well, I'm just testing you, you know. But it was the 23rd anniversary of the Peace Garden today. And, you know, we first started, some of you were there, we first started Samye Zong very close to the Peace Garden, just around the corner from the Peace Garden in Carlisle Lane. And so we were also there for the opening, and, you know, it just seemed to go. Sound. So the prayers were from 1 to 2, and we went there in good time, but of course they started a bit late, and then we couldn't get transport back, so it all just was you know, it didn't quite work as planned. So, but it's a nice sunny day. I'm sure you enjoyed your break also. So let's continue where we were. So at least, yes, I have a good reason. It was a good reason that I'm late. I think it's back now. Yeah, thank you. So last time, I want to just remind you, because I think it's helpful just to remember where we are, what we did. Last time what we covered the benefits of bodhicitta by analogies, you remember, by analogies, examples, to show us the importance. Like all the very first part of the book is why it's so important to develop bodhicitta. Something is not working, maybe it's me. So the benefits of bodhicitta. So it talked about, it's like alchemy, because it transforms our ordinary mindset. Yeah, it transforms our ordinary way of thinking about me and into thinking about all beings. That is the bodhicitta aspect. So it totally transforms in the same way as alchemy transforms iron into gold. It's like a precious jewel, wish-fulfilling jewel, because through bodhicitta we benefit and others benefit. It's like a fruit-bearing tree that always has continuous benefit, bodhicitta. And it's like a strong bodyguard that overpowers negativity and fear and obstacles. With that mindset of bodhicitta, nothing is too much for us if we have bodhicitta. Nothing is sort of insurmountable. It's that mindset that bodhicitta gives us. Even on a small scale. So we talked about that, and then how to train and generate, how to develop bodhicitta. So the first part is about this, how to develop bodhicitta when we don't yet have it. How to develop this mindset of wanting to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings where that does not exist yet. So first we have to find it. Then when we've found it, we have to train in it and make sure that it becomes stable. And that's where we were taught, through positive actions and through generation of merit, right? How important that is, that we engage in positive actions, positive thinking, positive speech as much as we can, because that's how also this alchemy happens. And this happens through the 6 perfections, the first of which is generosity. So we looked at generosity and the different types of generosity and how this is a state of mind, but of course it doesn't mean that we can just sit back and say, oh, it's all a state of mind, so we'll just sit here and daydream. You know, we won't do anything, we won't bother actually applying it. If we are fortunate enough to have something we can share and we can put into good use, then we should rejoice and we should feel how fortunate I am. I'm able to do something really positive in my life. I'm able to do positive things with my material wealth, or I'm able to give protection to others, or I'm able to share the Dharma with others. These 3 types of generosity, right? We looked at them. And mainly we can do, it's like material things, but it's also things like offering prayers. You know, prayers and aspirations is a form of generosity. It's a form of mental generosity. So there are many, many different ways of practicing generosity. And we looked at the recipients. That means the beings of devotions, all the great masters, the lineage, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, three jewels. Then there's the guests of respect, our parents, our lesser teachers maybe, all those who have helped us, all those who have held our hand along the way on the path, all those who have given us encouragement when we needed encouragement, all those who have sort of helped us to move forward when we needed a helping hand. And then there are the guests of compassion, which is absolutely all sentient beings in the 6 realms of suffering. All beings in the 6 realms of suffering are our field of merit, you could say field of accumulation of merit, but they are regarded with compassion. So you have these different ways. It's like we don't have the same relationship with everyone. Some we have relationship of respect, some of devotion, some of compassion. So you can, of course, what we have to do is not leave all of this as theory. This is really important when we study the Dharma. In all aspects of Dharma, we have to translate it into our own life and our own spiritual path and say, how can I transform my mindset? How transformed is my mindset already? Through bodhicitta, I recite it every day. I recite my prayers every day. Have they made? Do I remember? Do I look? Do I engage? Do I do I observe? And actually that's what we come on to today, is about carefulness, being careful. But we have to think of it in terms of our own personal life, not just in terms of information, not just in terms of notes in our notebook or pages, words on the page, but in terms of my own personal experience. And think about, so the key point that we looked at last time was merit and the importance of merit. And because we were taught that it's through the causes and conditions coming together. And the causes and conditions are a good fertile ground. And the manure, maybe, what makes the ground fertile is merit. Even though it sounds so kind of materialistic when we say it like that, but it's not in terms of, I have to accumulate all of this, I have to accumulate all of this, but it's about transforming our mind. It's about changing our mindset. So think also in that respect of how often we come across generosity in the Buddha's life story, or in any of the life stories of the great masters. I think I mentioned a few examples last time, but think of the Buddha on his path, which really goes back for lifetimes and lifetimes. It's said that for, 600 lifetimes the Buddha had accumulated merit until he became a Buddha. It's like lifetimes and lifetimes where he had made great sacrifices, made great offerings. He had even offered his own body. You remember of the story of him offering his body to a tigress, and all these sort of, whether we regard them as legends or not, but it's the examples of the importance of giving up and generosity, and because it gives up our own self-clinging. And so think about on the path of the Buddha, in the life as we know Sakyamuni, and as when, for example, when he was sitting before enlightenment, and he was sitting under the tree, and after his great, his great asceticism, when this shepherdess, she offered him milk, didn't she? She offered like milk that had been boiled again and again, so it was like really condensed milk and very rich and very full and full of nourishment. She offered this to the Buddha, and the consequences of that offering was all the marks and signs appearing on his body. And there was a grass cutter who offered him a seat just before his enlightenment. And all these things that happened before his enlightenment, they contributed to the Buddha's enlightenment. So for that reason, they are now said to be auspicious symbols. So when you do fire pujas in these very elaborate practices, like retreat practices, you have at the end of a 6 months practice, for example, you have a fire puja where you make offerings into the fire. And these are all these different substances that have a special significance in the, like to the life of the Buddha, the auspicious substances and signs, etc. And then, of course, during the Buddha's life, he walked what you call, people offered him dana, or people offered him food, right? All the monks and the nuns, they did not cook, they did not go buying their food and then do cooking. They did, they walked on alms rounds, pindapat, they call it in Sri Lanka, pindapat, and you go out with your offering bowl, and you have a staff, and the staff has little bells on the staff, and you stand outside the houses and you just sort of ring it, stamp it 3 times on the ground, not like demanding, like, oh, here I am, come and give me food, but like gentle, ding, ding, ding. And it said that they would ring it 3 times, and if nobody came out, they would move on to the next household, and like that. And then if people came out, and they would offer food right into your offering bowl, so the Buddha would go on alms rounds like that. All his monks would go on alms rounds. And this was a way also for people to accumulate merit, generosity, offering food to the Buddha, giving strength. So these things are what we've covered really. So today what we're going to look at is the next part of the text is actually taking hold of bodhicitta. Now that we have found bodhicitta, then we take hold of it and we prevent it from deteriorating. So we take hold of it by taking the bodhisattva vow. So the explanation of the actual vow, or the bodhisattva vow, is a brief explanation of that. And then we prevent bodhicitta from deteriorating through carefulness and, you could say, introspection or vigilance, awareness, mindfulness. And these together, carefulness and vigilant introspection, they are what cover right conduct of the 6 perfections. Right conduct or ethical conduct, ethics. How to live our life. So, and here today we look at the carefulness in relation to the kleshas, to the afflictive emotions, but because the chapter is quite long. So that's what we look at now. And when you look at I wanted to tell you also that when you look at the teachings on bodhicitta, they are condensed into also what you call the 3 trainings, and they divide up the 6 perfections. So they talk about the right training in the right way of living, training in meditation, and training in wisdom. So training in the right way of living, it covers the first 4 perfections of generosity, right conduct, patience, and diligence. And then you have, of course, the second is training in meditation, which is also one of the parameters, and then third is training in wisdom. So these 3 trainings, and of course we need diligence in all of it. We need diligence in the right way of living, we need diligence in training in meditation and training in wisdom. But the function of these is to both to give us, it's explained as saying, is to give us a good life in this life, so that we can live a good life here and now, and so that we can have a good life in the future as well, a good spiritual life, a good general sort of well-being in a positive good life in samsara, and then a method to be free from samsara. So transcending, a way of transcending samsara through liberation. It's both of these, the 6 perfections. They are ultimately about bringing us to liberation, so freeing us from the cycle of samsara, but they're also about living a good life here and now. So that's maybe, I think, is important to know that it covers both. So in terms of this right way of living and 3 trainings. So then, in terms of taking hold of bodhicitta, then how do we take hold of the bodhicitta? Through all of our practice, of course, but through also taking the bodhisattva vow. And that's given in a ceremony, but we can also take it ourselves. It is part of the mundro. When we do, if any of you do the mundro, like you know, there's 100,000 prostrations, and as part of doing the 100,000 prostrations, in the text you also have the bodhisattva vow at the end of after the prostration part. And the prostrations are about strengthening our refuge. So you do 100,000 prostrations and the refuge prayer. So really it's about deepening our refuge and bodhicitta. But usually when you take the actual vow, it's normally given in a ceremony. And this will be, mostly this is the aspiration vow, bodhicitta. It's not the application vow, it's the aspiration vow. Where we're saying, I aspire. I want to become a great bodhisattva. I want to do the best. I want to have compassion for all beings. I want to have compassion in my, body, speech and mind. But we know that we fall short. We know that we are not always capable. We're just saying that I will do my best. I'll try step by step. I will do my best to think of others, to give up my self-involvement and to do whatever I can at this stage. I will apply in terms of conduct and training. And so in that relation, there's two verses I wanted to read for you from the Way of the Bodhisattva. Where Shantideva, he says, just as all the Buddhas of the past have brought forth the awakened mind, bodhicitta, and in the precepts of bodhisattvas, trained step by step. Likewise, for the benefit of beings, I will bring forth this awakened mind, and I will abide and train myself in these precepts step by step. So he says in both verses, it says step by step, which is reassuring, because what this means is that it's not like we're saying we're not taking a precept. When you take the bodhisattva vow, you know that actually you're not going to be able to live up to it. You know that you're going to break it. You know that you have to keep renewing it. They say it's compared to dust falling on a mirror. When you have a mirror, you need to keep cleaning it. You need to keep polishing it, because there's always dust falling on it. So you keep wiping away the dust. And when you compare it to the formal precepts where we say, I will not kill, I will not steal, I will not lie, etc. Those precepts, they're actual precepts that we can break. And when they are broken, then they are broken. And they say that taking your precepts, it's like a clay vase, or maybe a glass vase like this. And if it falls on the ground, it's broken, and it's pretty hard to repair it. Even if you repair it, you might glue it back together, but it's not quite like before. It doesn't look quite as smooth and nice as before. It's hard to repair. But actually it says a clay vase, and clay, it just falls to pieces. So that's our precepts. When the precepts are broken, they're broken. We have broken the precepts if we kill intentionally, and we succeed. We have the intention, we have the action, we have the object, and we succeed with that action. This is like a broken precept. Not if it's accidentally, but it's intentionally. But with the bodhisattva vow, it says that the bodhisattva vow is like a golden container. And if that golden container falls on the ground, it gets a little dent, but it does not break. It is this mental intention that we continue to restore it by taking setting that intention again and again. Like whenever you have a meditation session at the beginning, you recite refuge and bodhicitta. Always refuge and bodhicitta. This four immeasurables, or the bodhicitta aspiration, is generally always at the beginning of our session. So this is because we are always repairing, we're always re-establishing, we're always reminding ourselves of that mindset. And that is like we're polishing the mirror, we are maybe repairing that golden container. So it's not something we should worry about taking. And like you see here, Shantideva says, step by step, I will apply myself to the very best of my ability, apply my skills. I will develop my awareness, my wisdom, my intelligent awareness on the path of helping others. We are not really capable in the beginning. It's more about refining our mindset in the beginning than anything else. But that is a right way to start. So we take the bodhisattva vow and then we try to keep it. So the way we try to keep it is that there are certain guidelines for when we have taken the bodhisattva vow. You could say code or conduct, guidelines for aspiration, bodhicitta. And one of them says that we should not give up hope on any beings. If we once we say, well, I am a Buddhist, I am an aspiring Mahayana Buddhist on this Mahayana path of the Bodhisattva path, then we would do our best to not give up hope on any beings. But what that means is that give up hope on being able to help any being, even the tiniest ant, the biggest elephant, or even our enemy, or the most difficult person. We would not give up hope. But it doesn't mean that we are saying that we will be able to do it now. It doesn't mean we will be able to do it even in this life. It means that we have the commitment that in the future and in future lives, surely we will be able to include all sentient beings in the scope of our activity, our bodhisattva activity. So we don't have a mindset of saying, I will never, ever, ever, I will close my door. I will never, ever, ever close my door to anyone completely. But that doesn't mean that I am capable of dealing with my so-called enemy here and now. I'm just keeping in my mind that it may not happen now, it may not happen next year, next life, but it might happen in a future life. Say when people get divorced, right, they usually they like to keep distance between themselves after a divorce. They don't want to bump into each other too much. You might have a lot of resentment, you might have a lot of issues that were left from your many years together. But then you should think, well, I want to forgive and I want to move on and I want to, in the future, be able to make good whatever damage was done in that process. So you don't close your door completely to that possibility. It's sort of that mindset. Then you also say that you will train yourself to remember the benefits of bodhicitta. So you're saying that you will be mindful of the benefits of bodhicitta, meaning not to always think about yourself, not to always be self-centered, to care mostly about yourself, or just a few, but try to expand your way of thinking. So remembering the benefit of giving up ego clinging, because ego clinging is also the cause of our problems. So that's sort of that idea that we should train to remember, because our main issue is we forget. And the third thing is that we say that we will accumulate merit and wisdom. We will put in, through positive actions, we will accumulate merit through the 6 perfections, and through study and contemplation and meditation we will accumulate wisdom. So we're saying that we will put in effort in these areas of positive action and study, reflection and meditation. We say we will train in bodhicitta through all the different methods of meditation, Tonglen or Chenrezi, contemplation, etc. And then the last one says that it talks about the 4 negative and 4 positive actions. 4 negative actions to avoid, 4 to apply. And the first one is in relation to those who are worthy of respect, teachers, parents, friends. We're saying that we will not deceive our teachers, we will not deceive our parents, our friends, those who have helped and supported us. And we will respect them, we will show respect in that relation. Then also we say to those, when somebody have done good actions, we will not cause them to regret those positive actions, and instead we will rejoice. We will rejoice in the good actions of others, and we will not make them regret positive actions. And in terms of those teachers who are people and anyone who has helped you, we're saying that we will not say unpleasant things about them, those who have helped us along the path. And we will instead we will praise them to others, because this is ultimately is for our own benefit. And then the fourth is in terms of influencing others. We will not be a negative influence on others, and we will be a positive. We will try our best to be a positive influence on others, to encourage others. So these are the ways you could say how to keep the bodhisattva vow. Once we have taken the bodhisattva vow, these are the guidelines for bodhisattva. So it's about, we watch our own mind, watch our motivation, watch how we act and think. This is the key point. So then now we've looked at this generation of bodhicitta where it did not previously exist, and we've talked about taking hold of bodhicitta. And then now the text, the way of the Bodhisattva talks about how to prevent bodhicitta from weakening once it has been generated. Now that we have understood the importance of bodhicitta. We have to some degree, I would say, because I think truly understanding takes a long time. But we have to some degree, we have understood the importance of having the mindset that is very broad and all-inclusive. And we have seen how a small mindset that only thinks about, when I only think about myself, I usually feel very miserable. It actually is not a good place to be. When it's all about me, I know I'm in a bad place. So it shows us, we have clear experience of the benefits of bodhicitta, of having a vast mindset, of having this broader mind that is capable of thinking of more than just me. That's where we're trying to go. So now that we have recognized that we have come closer to that understanding, we need to grasp it and remember it and not lose it. And because this is our savior. This is like that cow's tail we talked about before. Hold on to the cow's tail. Even if we haven't seen the whole cow, we have at least caught a hold of the tail. And just let that cow lead us home. Lead us home by holding on to it. Don't let it weaken when it has been did. And that's where then Shantideva talks about carefulness. Bayu. In Tibetan it's called bayu. It means, it's translated as being careful, being mindful, being heedful, having awareness, being conscientious, knowing what is right and what is wrong, being careful about what is right and what is wrong. And we are not bad people, right? We are, all of us. I think we can say safely that we are not bad people, all of us here. But it's about refining our mindset. It's about refining our motivation, about being aware and recognizing our motivation and remembering to tune in and to be careful and to see what is helpful and what is not helpful. So developing this carefulness and introspection. And of course, we know that when negative mind states overwhelm us, what we know is we lost carefulness, we lost mindfulness, we lost awareness. That's the key point. So what we know is that our carefulness and our mindfulness was not strong enough. So we need to strengthen that. We need to make it sharp, and we need to make it really sort of bright and present. We need to be more present, because that's why we get a little bit sidetracked. That's why. And then of course when our mindset, when we get lost, then our actions, our speech get lost. So we just need to refine that, strengthen it, and that's where it comes together to cover our conduct, our discipline. You know, you have many different terms that will cover all of that. Discipline, right discipline, ethical conduct, ethics, carefulness, mindfulness, vigilant introspection, all of these terms. Nagarjuna said, just as the earth is the basis for both the still world and all its moving occupants, in the same way, right conduct is the ground of all good qualities, is the foundation for all good qualities. Because if we don't have it, that's where we get lost, and we get just carried away by when our negative thoughts arise. That gives rise to negative emotions, negative actions, bad, negative karma, negative consequences. So, root of all our positive qualities is having this, you could say, transcendent discipline, ethical right conduct, carefulness, and the way to maintain the right conduct, you could say, because conduct is about action. It is to be careful and to be mindful. So what also is explained in a text is that we should have real good understanding of what the meaning of this parameter of right conduct. Because if we don't, it could become a little bit of a demon. I think His Holiness Karmapa explained it as if it's misunderstood. If right conduct is misunderstood, it becomes a demon of austerity, a demon of extremes, where we think we put ourselves into a straitjacket, and we can't do this and we can't do that and we can't do this and we mustn't do this and then before we know it, we cannot move. We are not capable of action anymore because we have put ourselves into a prison. It becomes a prison. Right conduct is not meant to be a prison. It is meant to be guidelines for and to be a container of joy, that because we understand the consequences of our actions. It has to have the understanding of the consequences. It has to have the understanding of right and wrong, not just be rules and regulations. So it has to have this understanding of what we have to abandon and what we have to adopt, and due to that a delight or a joy comes out of that understanding, because if we know what to avoid and what to adopt, then that means that naturally is a cause of our happiness, because we give up the causes of suffering. So you could call this the right conduct, or you could say it's like having a moral compass. It's not just having lots and lots of rules that we have to follow, and because I think also in the West we're a little bit afraid of rules. We think we have to be so free, and but I know, like all the great teachers like Lama Yeshe Rinpoche is always telling us, freedom comes with responsibility. We cannot just have freedom with just no boundaries. Freedom comes with responsibility, our consequences. So we have to have this, we have to have moral principles and moral choices and a motivation that's based on right and wrong, right way of acting and behaving. And in terms of ethics, we have social ethics, we have medical ethics, we have, I think, professional ethics. In all of your jobs there are certain guidelines and rules that apply. So all of these, health and safety, you could say, the form of ethics, this is what you should do, this is what you should not do. We need to follow, we need to understand the guidelines in all aspects of life. And we also need to understand that in terms of our life, that there are certain things, certain problems that arise. There are certain problems maybe that are part of samsara that are unavoidable. The birth, sickness, old age and death. This is part of the cycle of samsara. We cannot get out of that. Here we are, right? This is part of our life. Birth, old age, sickness and death. But there are other problems in our life in samsara that are due to our lack of right conduct or ethics. There's corruption, right? There's all sorts of crime and abuse and addiction. Many of our kleshas, they arise due to lack of conduct, lack of ethics and having a moral compass, lack of discipline. You could even say like a depression, anxiety arises due to lack of discipline. So many of our problems are avoidable, and you could say that the remedy to these are this carefulness and baya, Tibetan baya, and shila, sutrim. In Tibetan, right conduct is called sutrim. In Sanskrit, it's called shila. So sutrim means this right conduct, the right way of living according to this ethical understanding, that we know the consequences. So we need that, because this will help us, and this is where we need to integrate that into our life as principles that will help us to avoid creating harm for ourselves and for others, and help us to develop our well-being, so that the world around us become a better place, our, internally, externally. So like the Dhammapada, this famous verse from the Dhammapada that is like encapsulates the Buddhist teachings. We teach that to all the schools when the school parties come here. Say to give up negative actions, to practice positive actions, to tame your mind. That is the teachings of all the Buddhas. So this encapsulates right conduct. To give up negative actions, to practice positive actions. This encapsulates sutrim, shila, carefulness, baya. And it's said that this sutrim has two pillars. How to practice this right conduct. What will help us to practice is first, the first principle is to recognize our shared humanity. And the second is to recognize our interconnectedness. So we need to see that our, if we recognize these two pillars, then it will be easier for us to practice right conduct, because we will understand. It's not just about judging everything. It's not just about saying this is what you must do that, and you must not do this. This is what you have to do. This is what you should not do. Most people don't like to be told like that, but we need to understand what is the actual, what is the meaning. So His Holiness Dalai Lama explains it as that if we should think about this, our own well-being is not separate from that of others. So our shared humanity, in terms of that we all want to be happy. We all have problems. We all have similar problems. We all have shared problems, like birth, sickness everywhere now, COVID everywhere, wars everywhere, all kinds of problems in terms of simply loss and gain. We're all the same in that way. We're all equally wanting to be happy and equally wanting to be free from pain and loss and sorrow etc. We appreciate this basic sameness. We can sympathize with others when we see that they have similar problems to us. They have similar dreams to us. His Holiness says we should think of it. We are all part of the human family, not just that we are Europeans or we are Asians or we are whatever Africans or whatever part of the world, but we are part of humanity. We are not so different in that sense. And then we should think of in terms of interconnectedness, that we all have effect, we all affect each other. We all are interconnected. Whatever happens in one part of the world will have a ripple effect in other parts of the world. And similarly, whatever I feel and whatever I express will have effects on immediately around me, but also wider. We know in terms of consumers, we consume and it has wider effects. We know in terms of, again, COVID and how it spreads, and we know in terms of wars and Ukraine, and we see food supplies, how everything is so interrelated in the world, the internet. We hear something, we know about what is going on all around the world. There's not one single cause to our problems, not one single source. It is all like a web. We are all so interrelated. We just tend to be very small-minded and just focus on one thing, or this thing, or this thing. We need to broaden put different glasses on and see the bigger picture. This really is what the teachings tell us. Think about all of you, all sentient beings. Think about many lives. Think about all of humanity. Think about the interconnectedness. Don't think about just your own little world. And then have carefulness. And once we recognize this interconnectedness, then we also recognize how important it is to try and develop some level of control in our own life and how we contribute to everything around us. It's important to develop mindfulness, discernment, vigilance, carefulness, this compassionate motivation as much as we can as a way of life, in this way of living. So, and then at the same time also being realistic about what we can manage. So we don't have to do more than we can, but we need to start from where we are, and then, as these verses said, step by step by step, we apply ourselves, but with that vast view. I think in this day and age, we're very well sort of equipped for having a vaster mindset because of internet and all the social media, etc. We know much more about what's happening in the world when Buddhism talks about all sentient beings. Now, it's not only human beings, it is all living beings. So in a sense, it also doesn't just apply to this earth, this planet. It's limitless sentient beings, formless form beings and formless beings, but limitless beings. But we are, in a way, we are equipped to think wider and to see the consequences in a much wider way, and to recognize consequences of our actions in a wider way than maybe perhaps in previous sort of times. So I'm aware that, so now I think it's late time for our break. This is a good place to stop. Then we'll have a break and we will come back in half an hour, and when we'll talk about carefulness, developing carefulness and mindfulness in relation to the emotions. This is what Shantideva talks about in a big part of the next chapter. So let's just do the dedication and then we come back in half an hour. Senam de tam je se pane tomne ne pedanam pam chene chegana je balab to paye se pe sole do wa See you then. Have a good break. Palden save lama rinpoche dage jiwa pende den shula kaden jemba gone jesonde kuzondu jinga du sadu so. So let's continue with. We will now look at then the carefulness, then how to maintain this sutrim through. So we maintain the ethical conduct, right conduct through carefulness, through bhaya, through mindfulness, through introspection. And that's where there's a quote in the text, Shantideva's text. It says, so to affirm this commitment, it says, the children of the Buddhas who thus have firmly grasped this bodhichitta should never turn aside from it, but should always strive to keep its disciplines. So he's saying that once we take the bodhisattva vow, the children of the Buddhas, like all the bodhisattvas, once we have grasped this mindset of bodhicitta, we should not turn away from it. We should strive to keep this sutrim, this ethical discipline, step by step. Yeah, and so really, I think we have talked about that. I already talked about that. And then he goes on to say, talking about practicing this bio-carefulness in relation to our afflictive emotions. This is something very relevant. Of course, it's relevant in all aspects of our life, the way we think, the way we speak, the way we act, but really the emotions are the most important part where we need to really be careful and be mindful. So Shantideva talks about practicing this bhaya, or carefulness, in relation to the mind poisons, to be given up, to be abandoned. And in that sense, so in one of the verses, he explains the shortcomings of the mind poisons or the negative emotions. We talk about anger, attachment, ignorance, jealousy, pride. He says they're like formless enemies. So this verse, I'll read the verse. He says, anger, attachment, these enemies of mine, they are limbless and devoid of faculties. They have no bravery, no cleverness. Then how is it that they have reduced me to such a slave? And he goes on to say, it is I who welcome them within my heart, allowing them to harm me at their pleasure. It is I who suffer without resentment, and my patience is misplaced. So Shantideva is talking here about how we are overpowered by the negative emotions, and how is that possible? How is it possible that we can be so overpowered by something that has no limbs, no bravery, no intelligence, no faculties, no way of thinking, but still we are totally under the sway of this formless enemy? Anger, aggression, our own mindset of anger, for example, or craving, or jealousy, etc. So he's saying they're like a monster, but they have no fangs, they have no frightening appearance, they have no real, what is it? Where does that power come from? And then he's saying that where we usually blame others, we are actually to blame ourselves because we welcome them. Isn't it? He says, it is I who welcome them within my heart. It's us who are not careful enough. It is us who say, yes, come on. It's okay to fan the flame of anger. It's okay to fan the flames of negative emotions. But because we don't realize the harm they're going to cause us, We don't realize this is how we are the ones who suffer as well as others. So Shantideva is telling us, this formless enemy, they're not like a thief, they're not like a soldier, or they're not like some big bully, external big bully that we can see their form, we can see what they look like, and there's some reason why we're getting overpowered, because they're much bigger than us, they come in the middle of the night when we're asleep or whatever. It's not like that. He says, it's us who we don't have enough carefulness, we don't have enough mindfulness, and in fact he's saying we have mistaken patience. So we should not be patient with our own anger. We should not be patient with our own shortcomings. Our own shortcomings or the reasons why we feel unhappy is due to our negative emotions. So we should not be patient with those causes. We should work hard to uproot them. If we are just thinking, we have to practice patience, patience is one of the 6 parameters, I must apply patience to my own anger, and we just allow it to be, allow patience to take over, allow anger to take over, allow negative thinking to take over, that's mistaken patience. Instead we should apply vigilance, we should apply mindfulness. We should not allow anger to dwell within my heart, as he's saying. We should not welcome them into my mind. We should recognize that it's not others' fault that anger arises. When we get angry, we think we are angry at that person, we're angry at that situation, we're angry for these and these and these reasons externally. But of course the Buddhist view is that there will always be external causes or reasons to be angry. So we can never overcome external causes. We must uproot anger within our mind. And if we should be angry with anyone, we should be angry with ourselves for allowing this anger to arise. So anger is the real enemy. We should blame the negative emotions. We should not be so sort of meek or weak or unresenting. We should not allow them to overpower us, because in that way we create our own suffering. And then Shantideva goes on to say that there's no other enemies that have harmed me as much as my negative emotions. So this is really all about pointing out the shortcomings of the mind poisons. It's like he's telling us, he's showing us why we should be careful, why we should not entertain negative mind states, why we should develop carefulness in relation to the mind poisons. So he's saying that no other enemies have harmed me so long. The verse says, no other enemy indeed has lived so long as my defiled emotions. O my enemy afflictive, passion, endless and beginningless companion. All other enemies that I have pacified will show me favors and give me aid if needed. But should I serve my negative emotions, they will only harm me and draw me down and give me pain and grief. So Shantideva is saying that in relation to what we normally think of as an enemy, enemies, or maybe we don't really have what we would call enemies, but if you think you might have a neighbor who's giving you a hard time, or a colleague who's giving you a hard time, or a relative you don't get on with, or somebody you don't get on with, you could say that's your enemy. But he's saying that in comparison to those people in our lives, that's a very short time. They are not. We react to them very strongly. We put so much emphasis on these few individuals in our lives, but that's really wrong, that's misunderstood, because they have just been in our lives for a very short time, whereas anger, the negative emotions, have been with us for much, much longer, for eons, for lifetimes. Endless and beginningless companions, our anger. We need to free ourselves from those enemies. the kleshas, what he's saying is the kleshas have harmed me longer than any individual in my life. We need to wake up to that fact that getting so uptight about external circumstances is the wrong approach. Instead, we need to develop inner peace and pacify this inner turmoil that so easily, we are so sensitive, we become so easily upset because we have wrong kind of sensitivity. Normally we think we're a sensitive person, that's a good thing. But actually this kind of sensitivity is not a good thing. Sensitivity where we become upset by the smallest little thing. We become upset because somebody didn't smile at us, they didn't talk to us, they didn't respond, they didn't do this, they didn't fulfill our expectations. This is the wrong kind of sensitivity. So we should think that that sort of mindset has harmed us much more than any individual, and that is what we need to look at and to pacify. That is Dharma training. That is what the Dharma path is about. Looking at our own mind, not looking at externals. So he's saying then also that when we normally have enemies, external enemies, we can apply diplomacy, right? Diplomacy is where we can find some way of finding common ground, and we can have a good talk, and we can work over, and this half of yours and that half is mine, and then we can sort of meet in the middle, or we can come to some kind of agreement, and then there is we move forward. Now that's not possible with the negative emotions. He's saying negative emotions, they are negative by their very nature. You cannot have diplomatic agreements. You cannot start sort of making halfway deals with the negative emotions, because their very essence is based on the wrong idea. They're based on a misunderstanding. And for that reason, it's either there or it's not there. It's either all or nothing. Because basically the misunderstanding is what we have to overcome. And once a misunderstanding is cleared, they dissolve. Because we have created them due to a misunderstanding. It's due to a misunderstanding that, the ignorance and the clinging to a self and the way we view the world through our dualistic sort of mindset is due to that all the problems arise. And once we have seen through that view, once we have cleared that misunderstanding, then naturally it all dissolves. The kleshas dissolve. They're not anymore, it's not an issue anymore. So they're not like an ordinary enemy. That's the point he makes here. Not an ordinary enemy. And then he says, therefore, if these long-lived ancient enemies are mine, who only gives me increasing pain, if they can find a place safe within my heart, what joy or peace can I find in the world? So this again, he's saying that there's only suffering that comes from allowing negativity within our mind, because their very nature is pain. Their very nature is like the nature of fire is heat, hot. Fire is by nature hot. So the negative emotions are by nature, they are painful. So he's saying then, we should practice carefulness. What do we do? How do we overcome them? We should practice mindfulness. We should practice this by awareness and introspection, so that we don't allow them to arise in the first place. They arise when we lapse, when we allow our thoughts to take over, and when we have weak mindfulness. So Shantideva also tells us we should not feel discouraged. We should endure hardship. We should, just like in ordinary life, we are willing to endure hardship in whatever we are accomplishing, whatever we're doing in our life, in our work, in our education, in our family. A little bit of hardship, we're all expecting that. So in the same way on our Dharma path, we should expect a little bit of hardship, a little bit of effort is needed, and not to lose heart. So not to become discouraged in terms of our Dharma path and our own mind state. We should continue working on the purification and accumulation of merit and this right conduct. So the right conduct, of course, it's dependent on awareness and right conduct. Like without the awareness, we are not capable of putting into practice, giving up negative actions, practicing positive actions, because our negative habits are very strong, and we give in to thinking based on ignorance, attachment and aversion. The root mind poisons are ignorance, attachment and aversion. So Shantideva also talks about that we should try and put effort, but it's not like battling our thoughts as such, but put effort into practicing carefulness and mindfulness. And we should use wisdom. We should defeat the kleshas with the eye of wisdom. So Shantideva says, then common enemies, when driven from the state, they retreat and base themselves in other lands, and then they regain their strength and return again. But our afflictions don't have these kind of strategies. They are scattered by the eye of wisdom. So he's saying, if you develop clarity of mind and wisdom, and before it was mentioned, we should study, we should contemplate, we should practice meditation to develop more and more clarity, awareness, wisdom, mindfulness, etc. Then this is the eye of wisdom that scatters the defilements, like the enemy. They don't return because they don't exist. So if we can have clarity of mind and strengthen that clarity of mind, then we win the battle. He says we should know their nature, which is like a mirage. We should not identify with our thoughts, with our negative emotions, not think that this is something solid, something permanent that is part of my mind. It is not. It is something very temporary, something that just arises when the different conditions come together, but it's like a mirage, and it will dissolve. So we should not suffer due to them. So Shantideva says, this is how I should reflect and put in effort when I take up the different precepts and bodhichitta. And he's saying that just like a patient in need of medicine, and he's saying which patient in need of medicine would ignore his doctor's words and then regain his health? It's like a question, rhetorical question, saying of course we should put in an effort in this way, because otherwise we are the patient and we won't get better if we ignore the advice of the doctor, which is the Buddha. We won't get better than if we are sick and we go to the doctor and then ignore what the doctor says. It's not going to help us very much. And he's saying that the kleshas, or the ignorance, attachment and aversion, these are like a disease that we have caught, that then give rise to all sorts of other illnesses, anxiety and depression and etc., etc. We have a mindset where basically we are unhappy. So the Dharma is the medicine, and here the medicine is this carefulness, applying carefulness. So now that he's saying, now that we understand the problem of the kleshas, we should try and apply carefulness as much as we possibly can. So I have sort of like raced through this, but I think it's okay. And what I was going to say as a conclusion really is that what's really helpful is for all of you to contemplate interconnectedness. Think about how everything we know, everything we have learned, everything we own, everything we eat, everything we wear, it's come to us depending on others. Everything depends on others in our life. Everything we do, everything we have, all the things we have. There's nothing that we can do or have ever done really totally on our own. In every situation of our life we can look and we can see we were depending on this and that and that and that and all these different connections to come together. We can of course also take some credit ourselves. We've put in the effort and we've done a good, put in what was needed to make things come together. Sometimes maybe we did not put enough effort in. So we have our role to play, but all by ourselves we would never have managed. So we should think about that in our own life and see, where, when we think about ourselves, then where do we draw the line between me and the world? What's me and the world? Is there a division at all between me and the world? Am I a member of a family? Am I just mainly an individual? Am I an individual, a member of a family? And to think of myself as a member of a country, a member of maybe of the world, a world citizen, I don't know. But that connection that we have, we are not separate from others. And it's really a good contemplation to do in a very personal sense of our own life. And in the same way also to contemplate how that interconnectedness relates to our own thoughts, our own speech and our actions. So how whatever we do with our body, speech and mind, how that affects everyone around us. Our thinking will express itself in some way or another. Even if we don't express our thinking through words, it will still express itself through our body language. Of course, sometimes we misunderstand each other's body language. That's also possible. But we give something out all the time. And without becoming too, claustrophobic about our contemplation, then these are the ways that we can see how we need to change. So recognizing the interconnectedness between ourselves and others, and then in terms of in relation to the negative emotions, because this is here where we talk about carefulness. So think about how the negative emotions affect our actions and our speech, and how, what the effect is both on ourselves and on others. Because we really don't feel good when we're angry. We really don't feel good ourselves. So if somebody expresses anger to us, we know that they're not really happy. They're not feeling good. So that also means that we have a bit more room for feeling like some sort of, give a bit of space in the situation to not get too upset. So in terms of all the negative emotions, to see the results. Think of the results in your own life and then on others around you. And then, of course, of the need for carefulness and mindfulness in these areas. So I think we'll have to leave it there. And so this is out of the 6 perfections. Then we have touched on the generosity and the right conduct. And then we have still patience, diligence, meditation and wisdom. And we'll continue next week. So we'll do the dedication now and see you next week. Vasanam de tam che se pane học nê nhé bê đà nam bam chê nê chê ca na chê ba lao tu pa ye si bê so lê đô wa sho sam chô sem chô rim bô chê ma chê pa nam chê chô chê chê pa nham pa me pa đăng con e con đô bê wa sho pa lên la me sha bê đêm pa đăng ca nham yong la đi si jong wa đăng ta shen ma lư so sa deb jang ne nhớ đôi sang dê ra la cơ pa